Betrayed in war, humanity strikes back with unstoppable force. Allies became enemies, but humans refused to fall. From betrayal to complete seizure, power shifted across the stars. Witness every epic moment of retaliation and dominance. Subscribe now and join humanity's unstoppable journey. Humanity had long trusted the Vorten Coalition, believing that after years of interstellar conflict, peace and cooperation were possible. For decades, both sides had exchanged resources, knowledge, and even soldiers in joint operations across the Outer Rim. Human colonies had begun to rely on the stability promised by this fragile alliance. Families on distant planets lived in relative calm, confident that their lives would no longer be dictated by war. However, all of this trust was about to be shattered in the most shocking way imaginable. It started with a routine intelligence intercept, a small team of human analysts monitoring communications between Vorten command centers. At first, the messages seemed mundane, logistical updates about fleet movements and supply shipments, but soon subtle inconsistencies appeared. Routes that were supposed to deliver critical fuel and ammunition were being redirected without explanation. Supply convoys went missing, and entire stations reported unexpected shortages. The analysts, at first unsure, dug deeper into months of data, connecting dots that led to a terrifying conclusion. The Vortens had secretly sabotaged key human supply lines during the final stages of the Outer Rim War. What had seemed like minor logistical hiccups were in fact deliberate attacks on humanity's ability to sustain its forces. Fleets had been left vulnerable. Starbases had been undermined, and countless lives had been put at risk for no reason other than betrayal. The revelation spread through military channels like wildfire. Shock turned to anger as commanders realized that the enemy they had been working alongside had been planning their downfall all along. The news did not stay confined to military intelligence for long. Within hours, civilian populations on multiple colonies were informed. Panic spread quickly as ordinary people struggled to understand why their trusted allies had turned against them. Families who had once sent their children to Vorten-operated schools now feared for their safety. Merchants who relied on Vorten trade networks suddenly faced uncertainty and loss. Entire planetary administrations scrambled to respond, trying to secure resources and protect civilians from potential follow-up attacks. Soldiers stationed at remote outposts felt the sting of betrayal keenly. They had fought alongside Vorten units, shared victories, and endured hardships together. Only now did they understand that every shared mission had carried the risk of hidden sabotage. Many felt anger and disbelief in equal measure, questioning how their comrades, who had appeared loyal and friendly, could have participated in such deceit. In military mess halls, quiet conversations became heated debates. Trust that had taken years to build evaporated almost overnight. The betrayal also had a psychological impact. Even seasoned commanders found it difficult to focus on strategy without letting feelings of anger and hurt interfere. Analysts warned that morale could drop sharply if the full scale of the sabotage was revealed too quickly. Yet the truth could not be hidden. Humanity's leadership faced the challenge of containing panic while simultaneously planning a response. Every decision now had to account for the possibility of further betrayal, and every move was measured against the memory of this treachery. Across the colonies, ordinary citizens reacted in ways both predictable and surprising. Some organized neighborhood watch groups, preparing for potential attacks or disruptions. Others turned to local militias for guidance. Hoping to defend themselves if human forces could not arrive in time, social networks and communication channels buzzed with speculation, rumors, and outrage. Everyone wanted to know why the Vortens had done this and what the next steps for humanity would be. The betrayal also highlighted the vulnerability of human systems. Despite advanced technology, intelligence networks, and a strong military presence, even a sophisticated alliance could be exploited from within. Strategists realized that contingency planning had been insufficient, and that trust alone could not guarantee safety. Lessons that had been overlooked in the eagerness for peace now became urgent priorities. And yet, amid fear and confusion, there was a spark of determination. Humanity, though betrayed, had survived countless threats before, and this would not break them. as the full extent of the sabotage became clear, from missing supplies to compromised stations and endangered colonies. The sense of betrayal deepened. Commanders and civilians alike felt a mixture of grief, anger, and resolve. This revelation would mark the beginning of a new chapter for humanity, one where trust would be tempered by caution, and where every plan, every fleet movement, and every alliance would be scrutinized with vigilance. The seeds of retaliation were sown here, in the shock of discovery, and in the quiet, simmering fury of a species determined not to be deceived again. Humanity's world had shifted overnight. From confident allies and peaceful colonies to a landscape of suspicion and strategic urgency. The Vortons had broken a sacred bond, and the consequences would be felt across the stars. But even in this moment of betrayal, humans began to organize, to plan, and to prepare, fueled by the injustice they had suffered. The betrayal revealed not only the fragility of trust, but also the enduring resilience and determination of humanity. In the wake of the shocking betrayal, Earth's United Defense Council convened an emergency session. The council chamber, usually a place of calm deliberation, was now filled with tension, anger, and urgency. Leaders from every major human colony gathered, their faces lined with worry and determination. Generals argued passionately for an immediate military response, insisting that any delay would allow the Vortons to regroup and strengthen their hold on compromised systems. Scientists and intelligence officers countered with detailed reports, emphasizing the need to fully understand the sabotage before launching a counterattack. The debate raged for hours, with every voice trying to weigh the cost of action versus inaction. Political leaders worried about the potential consequences of retaliation, fearing that striking too quickly might escalate the conflict beyond control. Yet, the more they examined the evidence, the clearer it became that humanity could not allow such treachery to go unanswered. Every lost supply line, every sabotage station, and every vulnerable colony demanded action. The room pulsed with a sense of urgency as advisors mapped out possible strategies on hollow screens and digital maps. Generals outlined precise military options, from surgical strikes on key Vorton bases to large-scale coordinated attacks across multiple sectors. Each plan focused on minimizing human casualties while maximizing impact on enemy infrastructure. Scientists explained the risks of overextending forces, pointing out that rushed attacks could leave humans exposed in other regions. Still, the mood of the council leaned toward action. The betrayal had stirred deep emotions, and human leaders felt a responsibility not only to punish the Vortons, but also to restore confidence among the colonies. Meanwhile, intelligence officers revealed the full extent of the sabotage. Images and data displayed on massive holoscreens showed destroyed supply convoys, abandoned starbases, and compromised fleet operations. The scale of the deception was staggering, far beyond anything initially suspected. Council members murmured among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Others clenched their fists, anger building as the reality sank in. This was not a minor act of treachery. It was a deliberate attempt to cripple humanity at its most vulnerable moment. Discussions also turned to potential alliances and the broader political impact. Several colonies proposed seeking support from neutral factions, hoping to isolate the Vortons diplomatically while preparing for military action. Economists and logistics experts stressed the importance of securing resources and maintaining supply chains during any retaliation. Leaders debated whether to publicly announce the betrayal immediately or to first strike in secret to catch the Vortons off guard. Every option carried its own risks and benefits, and no decision was easy. As the council worked through the night, a consensus slowly formed. Humanity would respond decisively, but not recklessly. Every fleet would be recalled and reinforced, every strategic station would be secured, and countermeasures would be deployed to prevent further sabotage. Political leaders agreed to coordinate closely with military commanders to ensure that civilian populations remained safe. Communication channels were prepared to broadcast instructions and updates to all colonies, emphasizing unity and resilience. The sense of shared purpose helped calm some of the initial panic, replacing fear with determination. At the same time, contingency plans were developed for worst-case scenarios, evacuation protocols, emergency supply drops, and defensive measures were put in place. Analysts ran simulations to anticipate Vorton reactions and potential counterattacks. Every possible scenario was considered, from limited skirmishes to full-scale fleet engagements. Humans were determined to be ready for anything. The Council understood that the betrayal had fundamentally changed the rules of engagement, and preparation was now as important as retaliation. Throughout the session, personal stories of loss and sacrifice surfaced. Commanders recounted how entire crews had been stranded or endangered due to the sabotage. Civilian representatives shared accounts of colonies left vulnerable and frightened. These stories added urgency to the Council's work, reminding everyone that decisions made in the chamber would directly affect lives across the stars. The atmosphere was heavy, but also charged with resolve. Humanity's leaders knew that decisive action was the only way to restore trust, stability, and honor. By the time the emergency session concluded, plans were in motion. Fleet mobilizations were scheduled, strategic targets were identified, and communication networks were fortified. The betrayal had shaken humanity to its core, but it had also ignited a fierce determination to protect its people and reclaim its strength. The Council members left the chamber with a clear understanding. Hesitation was no longer an option. Every decision from this point forward would carry the weight of the betrayal, guiding humanity toward a response that would be swift, precise, and unforgettable. Human fleets that had once patrolled distant sectors at a relaxed pace were now recalled with unprecedented urgency. Ships of all sizes streaked across star lanes, moving in tight formations toward strategic assembly points. Pilots and crews worked tirelessly, double-checking navigation systems, weapon calibrations, and defense shields. Engineers and technicians labored day and night, installing advanced countermeasures, upgrading propulsion systems, and integrating experimental weapons that had previously only existed in simulations. Every ship, every soldier, and every piece of equipment was being prepared for a conflict that demanded perfection. On the ground, soldiers underwent rapid deployment training. Exercises that normally took weeks were condensed into hours. Drill instructors pushed troops harder than ever, simulating sabotage scenarios, ambushes, and unexpected attacks. Everyone was taught to respond instinctively, to trust their training, and to act as a single unit. Communication protocols were tested relentlessly, ensuring that every squad, fleet, and command center could coordinate seamlessly, even under extreme pressure. The goal was to create a force that was faster, smarter, and more resilient than anything the Vortons had ever faced. Meanwhile, civilian engineers and volunteers from various colonies stepped forward to assist. Factories operated around the clock, producing replacement parts, ammunition, and emergency supplies. Some volunteered to work on orbital stations, reinforcing defensive structures and installing monitoring systems. Others focused on cyber defense, strengthening networks against potential Vorton hacking or infiltration. Every individual, whether in uniform or civilian attire, felt the weight of responsibility. And the shared sense of purpose united humans across planets and star systems. As fleets mobilized, colonies began receiving broadcasts from Central Command, informing citizens of the betrayal, the ongoing preparations, and the importance of readiness. While fear and uncertainty lingered, the tone of the messages emphasized strength, resilience, and the unbreakable resolve of humanity. Families prepared emergency kits, secured essential supplies, and followed instructions from local authorities. Even in the face of potential danger, communities began to show remarkable organization and solidarity. The betrayal that had initially sparked panic now served as a catalyst for collective action and unity. Strategists worked tirelessly to map the most effective routes and formations. Using simulations and real-time data, they calculated the positions of Vorton bases, supply lines, and fleet concentrations. Every decision was made with precision, ensuring maximum efficiency and minimum risk to human forces. Fleets were divided into specialized groups, some designed to strike quickly, others to defend key positions, and others to provide support and logistical aid. This coordination transformed human forces into a well-oiled machine, ready to respond with speed and accuracy. On board the ships, morale became a crucial focus. Commanders held briefings to explain the mission, emphasizing not just retaliation, but the protection of human lives and colonies. Soldiers shared stories of past victories, reminding each other of their resilience in the face of adversity. Musicians, entertainers, and communication teams worked to maintain morale across long missions, broadcasting messages of hope, determination, and unity to every crew. Humans understood that mental strength would be as vital as physical readiness. The recall of fleets and preparation of forces also had a visible effect on Vorten forces. Sensors and reconnaissance units reported unusual activity near key Vorten bases, movements that suggested heightened alertness and suspicion. Humans realized that speed was crucial. The longer they delayed, the more prepared the Vortens would become. Every hour counted, and the sense of urgency grew with each passing moment. At the same time, logistics teams ensured that every resource was accounted for. Fuel reserves were checked and double-checked, medical supplies were stockpiled, and emergency evacuation plans were finalized. Civilian support networks coordinated the transport of critical materials to orbital depots and forward positions. Nothing was left to chance, and every precaution was taken to prevent another sabotage. The betrayal had taught humanity the hard lesson that preparation and vigilance could not be compromised. As ships lined up in formation, ready to depart for their assigned sectors, a palpable sense of anticipation filled the air. Pilots ran final checks, crews shared last-minute instructions, and commanders reviewed every contingency. Everyone understood the stakes, the future of humanity in the Outer Rim, the safety of countless colonies, and the need to prove that betrayal would not break them. The mobilization was not just a military maneuver. It was a statement of unity, resilience, and determination. A promise to the stars that humanity would rise stronger and strike back with precision, skill, and unwavering resolve. The first strike was planned with precision, a coordinated effort that involved every branch of humanity's forces. Fleets moved silently through deep space, maintaining strict radio silence to avoid detection. Pilots navigated through asteroid fields and uncharted sectors, using them as natural cover to approach Vorten forward bases. Reconnaissance drones had already mapped enemy defenses, identifying weak points, supply depots, and communication hubs. The goal was clear: disable key targets swiftly and decisively, minimizing human casualties while maximizing the impact on the Vortens. As the attack commenced, human ships broke formation with perfect timing, each strike team targeting a specific objective. Some vessels unleashed rapid-fire energy weapons on supply depots, reducing warehouses and stockpiles to rubble. Others deployed electronic countermeasures to disable communication networks, leaving Vorten bases isolated and confused. Small strike crafts landed on lightly defended stations, deploying specialized units to sabotage critical systems from within. The coordination between orbital bombardment, ground infiltration, and cyber attacks was unprecedented, demonstrating the full extent of human planning and strategy. Vorten forces, taken by surprise, scrambled to respond. Alarms blared across their bases, but confusion reigned. Without clear communication, commanders were unable to direct reinforcements effectively. Some defensive systems activated too late, while others misfired due to human electronic interference. The precision and speed of humanity's strike left Vorten soldiers struggling to adapt. Their organized response quickly turned into disjointed attempts at defense, giving humans the advantage. On the surface of targeted planets, human strike teams moved swiftly, disabling key infrastructure. Seizing control of communication towers, weapons caches, and transport hubs, local Vorten units were either captured or forced to retreat. The speed and decisiveness of these operations demoralized enemy forces, who had not anticipated such a calculated retaliation. For many Vorten soldiers, the realization that their bases had been compromised before they could mount an effective defense was shocking. Confusion and fear spread rapidly through their ranks, weakening morale. Meanwhile, in orbit, human warships provided cover, intercepting any Vorten reinforcements attempting to reach the bases. Fighters engaged in high-speed dogfights, using superior tactics and coordinated maneuvers to overwhelm enemy squadrons. Heavy cruisers targeted defensive installations, creating breaches in shielding and opening pathways for ground units. Every action was synchronized, a testament to months of preparation and training. The combination of surprise, technology, and strategic thinking gave humanity a clear edge. Civilians on nearby colonies watched transmissions of the strikes with mixed emotions. Relief and hope mingled with the lingering fear of retaliation. News feeds highlighted the precision of the attacks, showing minimal civilian casualties while neutralizing major threats. Communities that had been paralyzed by the betrayal began to feel a renewed sense of confidence. Humanity was demonstrating not only its strength but also its discipline and restraint, sending a clear message to both allies and enemies. As the first strike concluded, Vorten forward bases were in disarray. Communications remained down, supply chains were disrupted, and defensive positions had been compromised. Analysts reported that the enemy's ability to respond effectively had been significantly reduced. Commanders immediately began planning follow-up operations, ensuring that gains were secured and that the Vortens could not regroup. The success of the strike energized human forces, reinforcing morale and commitment across fleets and colonies. Despite the victories, commanders remained cautious. Knowing that overconfidence could be dangerous, teams continued to monitor remaining Vorten positions, ensuring that no counterattacks could threaten newly captured territories. Strategic drones scouted ahead, mapping enemy movements and relaying vital information back to Central Command. Every human unit understood that the first strike was only the beginning, and that sustained pressure would be required to secure long-term advantage. In the aftermath, the psychological impact on Vorten forces was evident. Panic spread through their ranks, as soldiers realized that their defenses had been penetrated with surgical precision. Commanders struggled to reorganize, but mistrust and confusion hampered coordination. The first strike had achieved more than physical damage. It had shattered the illusion of Vorten control and exposed vulnerabilities that humans would continue to exploit. Human leaders, observing the success of the operation, reinforced the importance of discipline, restraint, and careful strategy. Celebrations were muted, focused instead on preparation for the next phase of operations. Fleets remained in alert positions, ready to exploit weaknesses and protect human colonies. The first strike had proven that humanity could act decisively, combine intelligence with technology, and turn betrayal into a rallying point. The message was clear. Humanity was not only retaliating, but doing so with unmatched precision, strength, and unity. Vorten territories descended into chaos almost immediately as human forces pressed their advantage. Cities and space stations that had once operated under strict control now faced confusion and disorder. Communication lines were down, supply routes were disrupted, and local commanders struggled to maintain order among panicked troops. In many regions, entire administrative networks collapsed as humans seized key infrastructure and isolated Vorten leaders. The speed and precision of the attacks left little time for the enemy to react, creating a domino effect that amplified disorder across multiple systems. Human fleets moved systematically through the sector, targeting critical points of control. Orbital bombardments neutralized major weapon emplacements, while specialized strike teams captured strategic command centers. Vorten soldiers, unprepared for such coordinated assaults, were forced to retreat or surrender. Fear and uncertainty spread quickly through enemy ranks. Lower-level officers hesitated to issue orders, unsure if their communications were reliable or if reinforcements would arrive. The confusion paralyzed much of the Vorten military apparatus, giving humans the opportunity to consolidate their gains. Ground operations were equally effective. Human strike units advanced into key cities and outposts with precision, seizing control of power plants, transport hubs, and communications towers. Local populations watched as the previously untouchable Vorten forces were swiftly overcome. Civilians in occupied areas began to cooperate with human forces, offering intelligence, guiding troops through complex urban layouts, and assisting in securing facilities. The rapid pace of the human advance left little room for organized resistance, and morale among the Vorten population began to crumble. Across multiple planets, reports came in of entire regions surrendering or defecting to human control. Some local governors, witnessing the collapse of central authority, chose to align with humans rather than resist, hoping to protect their citizens and preserve stability. Others attempted to flee, abandoning cities and leaving infrastructure unattended. This voluntary surrender and defection created a ripple effect. As neighboring territories saw the human advance and chose cooperation over futile resistance, the psychological impact on Vorten forces was profound. Soldiers and officers alike questioned their leaders' competence. Internal mistrust grew as accusations of cowardice, betrayal, and failure spread. Many units refused to follow orders, fearing that their leaders could not protect them. This internal breakdown magnified the effectiveness of human operations, with relatively small forces able to achieve objectives that would normally require far greater numbers. Human commanders capitalized on this disarray, coordinating orbital, ground, and cyber operations to maintain constant pressure. Fleets blocked escape routes and cut off supply lines, preventing Vorten units from regrouping or receiving reinforcements. Cyber teams infiltrated remaining communications networks, spreading disinformation to further confuse enemy forces. Every move was calculated to sustain the momentum of the seizure, ensuring that chaos did not give way to a coordinated counterattack. Civilian support within captured territories became a key advantage. People who had lived under Vorten rule for decades now actively assisted human forces, providing maps, technical expertise, and logistical support. Local resistance networks, previously suppressed, emerged to sabotage remaining Vorten positions. The combination of human military strategy and civilian collaboration made the conquest faster and more efficient, demonstrating humanity's ability to leverage both technological superiority and popular support. Despite the speed of operations, human commanders remained cautious, ensuring that seized territories were secured, supply routes were protected, and civilian populations were safe. Evacuation and medical teams moved alongside strike units to treat casualties and maintain order. Every victory was consolidated before advancing further, preventing the risk of overextension and possible setbacks. This careful approach allowed humans to maintain dominance while minimizing unnecessary destruction. Intelligence reports continued to reveal the depth of the chaos. Vorten communications were fragmented, strategic positions were abandoned, and morale was at an all-time low. Leaders within the human command saw that the enemy's ability to resist had been effectively neutralized. The once feared Vorten military now appeared vulnerable and disorganized, allowing humans to dictate the pace and direction of the conflict. By the end of this phase, entire sectors had effectively fallen under human control. The seizure was nearly complete, with pockets of resistance isolated and manageable. Human forces had turned betrayal into opportunity, transforming enemy disorder into strategic advantage. Across the occupied territories, the message was clear. Vorten control was over. Humanity was in command, and the era of uncertainty and chaos imposed by betrayal had been replaced by disciplined, calculated dominance. Humanity's advance inspired hope and action among civilians in the occupied Vorten colonies. Ordinary people who had once lived under strict control began to take risks to help the human forces. Local networks of resistance emerged almost overnight, guided by a desire for freedom and safety. Citizens provided critical intelligence, reporting troop movements, hidden supply caches, and weak points in defensive structures. This information allowed human commanders to plan more precise strikes, reducing the risk to their soldiers and accelerating the liberation of key areas. In many cities, civilians actively sabotaged Vorten operations, cutting power lines, disabling communication towers, and even redirecting supply convoys toward human positions. Local engineers and technicians worked alongside human cyber teams to infiltrate remaining enemy systems, providing access that would have taken weeks to achieve without insider knowledge. The cooperation between civilians and human forces created a unique advantage, combining strategic planning, technological skill, and first-hand local knowledge in a way that the Vortens had never anticipated. Soldiers on the ground noticed the effect immediately. Streets that were once patrolled by enemy troops were now filled with citizens guiding and supporting their operations. Supplies that had been scarce were now delivered with help from local networks, and safe zones were established for civilians to avoid crossfire. Human commanders emphasized protecting these populations, understanding that maintaining trust and goodwill was essential for long-term control. The success of these joint efforts also boosted morale among human troops, showing them that the people they fought for were active partners in the mission. Human strategists quickly adapted to leverage civilian support, incorporating local intelligence into operational planning, coordinating with resistance groups to create diversionary tactics, and using the knowledge of city layouts to avoid ambushes. This integration of civilian and military effort allowed humans to move faster, strike more effectively, and minimize collateral damage. The speed and efficiency of operations now surpassed anything planned purely by military calculation. As the Vortons struggled to respond, the combined force of humans and civilians created an unstoppable momentum. In rural areas and smaller settlements, the effects were equally powerful. Local farmers and transport workers disrupted supply chains, sabotaging Vorton logistics while ensuring that human forces could access essential resources. Even remote colonies provided safe havens for troops, stockpiles, and medical facilities, demonstrating that support for humanity's campaign extended far beyond major population centers. This widespread civilian involvement made it difficult for the Vortons to consolidate any area. For every position they fortified, new threats emerged from within, further destabilizing their control. Human leaders also implemented strict protection protocols to prevent harm to civilians. Patrols were assigned to secure liberated areas. Medical units treated injuries and illness, and emergency shelters were established for those affected by conflict. Commanders emphasized discipline among soldiers, reminding them that the success of the campaign depended as much on winning hearts as defeating armies. Civilians responded to this respect with loyalty and active cooperation, further strengthening humanity's strategic advantage. Communication networks became a lifeline for resistance. Civilians used secure channels to relay information in real time, coordinating with human forces to direct strikes, warn of enemy movements, and assist with evacuations. Even small pieces of intelligence, such as a single weakly defended checkpoint or the location of an abandoned supply depot, could make a critical difference in the outcome of a mission. This level of coordination demonstrated the potential of combining technology, strategy, and civilian initiative, and became a model for future operations. The psychological impact on Vorton forces was devastating. Knowing that their own populations were actively supporting the invaders undermined confidence and morale. Soldiers were less willing to fight when they saw local citizens collaborating with humans, and commanders struggled to maintain order and loyalty. Rebellion and defection among Vorton-aligned officials accelerated, leaving key positions undefended. This internal fracture further amplified humanity's success, as the enemy could no longer rely on the obedience or cooperation of the very people they ruled. Every victory reinforced the cycle of cooperation. With liberated areas quickly organized, stabilized, and integrated into human operational networks, civilians took pride in their role, participating in decision-making and problem-solving. Their involvement created a sense of shared purpose and ownership, strengthening the bond between soldiers and the populations they protected. Across multiple colonies, the story spread that humanity did not just conquer through force, but by working together with the people whose freedom had been stolen. By the end of this phase, the collaboration between humans and civilians had become a cornerstone of the campaign. Enabling faster, safer, and more effective operations, the Vortons, confronted with not only superior military forces, but also the active resistance of their own populations, found themselves increasingly isolated, disorganized, and demoralized. Humanity had proven that strategy, courage, and cooperation could overcome even entrenched control. The partnership between soldiers and civilians became a decisive factor, ensuring that every step forward brought liberation, security, and renewed hope to the occupied colonies. Human fleets converged on the Vorton Central Command with unmatched precision. Every vessel moved in carefully calculated formations, covering multiple approach paths to ensure that no escape or reinforcement was possible. Reconnaissance drones had mapped every obstacle, every defensive perimeter, and every patrol route, allowing human commanders to plan strikes with almost surgical accuracy. The sense of anticipation was palpable among soldiers, knowing that the final push would determine the fate of the entire sector. Orbital bombardments began first, targeting heavy weapon installations and defensive turrets. Energy pulses lit up the void as shields flickered and systems overloaded. Human ships coordinated their attacks to disable key points simultaneously, preventing the Vortans from mounting an organized defense. Fighters and interceptors darted between larger warships, engaging enemy craft and neutralizing threats before they could regroup. Every maneuver was timed perfectly, ensuring maximum disruption and minimal risk to human forces. On the surface, elite strike teams landed at strategic points surrounding the central command. They moved swiftly, using stealth and speed to disable security systems, communication hubs, and power generators. Vorten soldiers were caught off guard by the precision and coordination of these landings. Many units surrendered immediately, realizing that resistance was futile. Human squads systematically cleared buildings, secured vital equipment, and established control over critical infrastructure. Their efficiency left no room for enemy regrouping or counterattack. Cyber operations ran concurrently with the physical assault. Human hackers infiltrated Vorten networks, disabling alarms, rerouting defense systems, and feeding false information to enemy commanders. Confusion spread quickly through Vorten ranks. Officers struggled to distinguish between real threats and human manipulations. Communications broke down entirely in many areas, isolating units and preventing coordinated responses. The combination of orbital, ground, and cyber tactics demonstrated the full power of human strategic planning, overwhelming the enemy on all fronts. As the human forces advanced, Vorten morale collapsed. Soldiers who had once been confident and disciplined now fled or surrendered. Fear and confusion spread like wildfire. Internal mistrust grew as officers blamed each other for failures. Commanders struggled to regain control, but the simultaneous pressure from multiple directions made any recovery impossible. Even loyalist units found themselves isolated and vulnerable, their defenses crumbling under the relentless precision of human operations. Human leaders ensured that operations remained disciplined, avoiding unnecessary destruction while consolidating gains. Patrols secured captured zones, medical teams treated the wounded, and engineers restored essential systems to prevent collapse of basic infrastructure. Civilians in liberated areas assisted wherever possible, offering intelligence, guidance, and logistical support. The collaboration between military forces and local populations continued to be a key advantage, making each victory both swift and sustainable. Every step forward was carefully coordinated, with orbital bombardments softening defenses before landings, cyber teams disabling enemy systems, and ground squads securing positions. The pace of the advance was relentless, leaving the Vortens no time to regroup. Counterattacks were swiftly intercepted, and retreating forces were cut off. Human commanders maintained constant communication, monitoring every sector to adapt strategies in real time. The central command of the Vortons was slowly being strangled, its power fading under systematic pressure. As elite teams reached the heart of the central command, they encountered pockets of resistance. But even here, precision tactics and overwhelming coordination gave humans the advantage. Defensive systems were neutralized, officers captured, and critical data seized. The Vorten Central Command, once the symbol of authority and control, was effectively disabled, its operational capacity destroyed, leaving the remaining forces scattered, directionless, and demoralized. The psychological impact on Vorten forces was devastating. Realizing that their leaders had been captured or neutralized, many surrendered without further fight. Units that had hoped to mount a last stand collapsed. Chaos spread through remaining territories, making them easy targets for consolidation. Human forces, meanwhile, remained disciplined, maintaining order while securing every sector, demonstrating not just strength, but strategy, restraint, and efficiency. By the end of the final push, humanity had achieved complete operational control over the Vorten Central Command. The enemy's power had been broken. Their ability to organize or retaliate had been eliminated. Human fleets and strike teams had proven that calculated precision, coordination, and determination could overcome even the most formidable adversaries. Across the sector, news of the conquest spread, signaling the end of organized resistance and the establishment of human dominance. The final push was not only a military victory, but a demonstration of resilience, strategy, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. Humanity stood victorious over the Vorten territories, yet the mood was far from celebratory. Commanders and leaders moved carefully through liberated systems, ensuring that every region was stable. Supply lines were re-established, communication networks restored, and local governance reorganized to prevent chaos. Civilians began to emerge from fear and uncertainty, slowly returning to their daily lives with the reassurance that human forces were not only protectors but partners in rebuilding. The liberation was as much about restoring order as it was about defeating an enemy. Across the sector, the captured Vorten leaders were detained for interrogation and eventual trial. Intelligence teams worked tirelessly to collect evidence of sabotage, war crimes, and operational failures. These records would not only hold the Vortens accountable, but also serve as a warning to any who might consider betraying humanity in the future. Legal and military advisors collaborated to ensure that justice was carried out fairly and decisively, establishing a standard that emphasized both strength and moral authority. Humanity's military forces began consolidating their positions, ensuring that no residual pockets of resistance could threaten the newly liberated colonies. Fleets maintained patrols along key star lanes, monitoring for any signs of regrouping or hostile activity. Ground units assisted in reconstruction, repairing infrastructure damaged during the conflicts, and providing security for civilians rebuilding their communities. Every action was carefully planned to demonstrate that human control was stable, fair, and permanent. In liberated colonies, the response from civilians was overwhelming. People volunteered to assist with rebuilding, establishing schools, repairing hospitals, and organizing local councils. Communities that had once feared occupation now participated actively in governance and protection. The bond between soldiers and civilians strengthened, as shared experience and mutual respect created trust and loyalty. Human commanders encouraged this involvement, understanding that cooperation and engagement were key to long-term stability. Diplomatic channels were reactivated with neighboring sectors and neutral factions. Humanity sought not only to consolidate power, but also to establish alliances that would prevent future betrayals. Envoys and diplomats emphasized the lessons learned from the Vorten treachery, promoting a strategy of vigilance, preparedness, and mutual support. These efforts helped reassure colonies and allies that human leadership was both strong and responsible, capable of protecting interests while maintaining ethical governance. Strategists analyzed every step of the campaign, recording successes, failures, and lessons for the future. The betrayal and subsequent retaliation highlighted vulnerabilities in intelligence, logistics, and command structures, leading to immediate reforms in training, fleet coordination, and early warning systems. Preparations were made to ensure that no single act of sabotage could destabilize humanity again. The memory of the betrayal became a driving force for improving readiness and strategic planning across the sector. Amidst reconstruction, humanity also reflected on the resilience and determination that had carried them through. Stories of heroism, clever tactics, and civilian support circulated widely. Serving as inspiration for both current and future generations, military and civilian leaders recognized that victory had been possible not only through technology and strategy, but also because of human courage, unity, and the refusal to be broken by treachery. These narratives reinforced a collective identity rooted in perseverance and moral resolve. While the immediate threat of the Vortens had been neutralized, vigilance remained a priority. Fleets continued to patrol borders, intelligence networks monitored potential threats, and colonies participated actively in defense readiness. Humanity understood that true security required constant attention, and the betrayal had been a stark reminder that complacency could be dangerous. Planning and training became ongoing, ingrained practices rather than temporary measures, ensuring that the lessons learned would never be forgotten. In the aftermath, humanity also sought to rebuild relationships with those colonies that had been caught in the middle of conflict. Human leaders facilitated economic aid, educational programs, and infrastructure projects, demonstrating that liberation was more than a military objective. It was a commitment to a better future. Trust, once broken by betrayal, began to be restored through careful governance and consistent protection. Colonies increasingly saw humans not just as conquerors, but as stabilizers and partners, capable of fostering safety, growth, and opportunity. By the time the campaign concluded, the story of retaliation and complete seizure became a legend. Across sectors, humans spoke of how betrayal had been met, not with despair, but with strategy, unity, and determination. The operation had proven humanity's ability to respond decisively, maintain discipline, and integrate both military and civilian strengths to achieve overwhelming success. Lessons of vigilance, resilience, and moral responsibility became embedded in the culture of human governance, ensuring that the betrayal would never be forgotten and that humanity's strength, unity, and intelligence would guide the future.